We are joined by Pastor Zach Kim of C3 Dunedin. He's a trained social worker and also the man behind the smartphone license program. So good morning, Zach. Great to have you on the show today.
Oh, tēnā koroa, guys. Great to be on with you.
Well, why don't we quickly talk about this smartphone license program as well, because it feels like that might have come about out of recognition that being online can be a challenging, maybe even dangerous place sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, the big idea behind that, Andrew, was that I just thought it would be good for parents and all of us as adults actually to have some sort of a framework, I guess, around how to help kids safe and how to ease them into using their phones for the first time, and how to have some restrictions, and then with experience and trust and all these good things start to get those restrictions off. And really the big idea was actually, I was like, it's just like when you get your driver's license for your car.
Great idea.
The same idea.
Yeah,
You know,
nice.
you don't want to give a
safe.
15-year-old. Yeah, you don't want to give a 15-year-old the keys and say go, and then like they have a crash and you go, oh, actually we should have talked to you about that. It's like, no, let's
Yeah, a red
give
light
some
means
resource.
stop. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
bad
that's
thing.
right.
You don't drive
Give some
through those.
resources, explain to
Yeah.
them some of the rules, some of the risks,
Yeah.
and then ease them in through the whole restricted license thing, and say, hey, look, after 10, probably don't drive because that's when dangerous stuff happens. And
Yeah, cool.
Well, Zach,
same idea.
let's talk about net safety because it is Net Safety Week. So,
Yeah.
what are the main concerns at the moment around internet safety?
Oh, it's a whole minefield, isn't it? I think every parent listening to this would, have some felt needs. Obviously, there's all sorts of things around cyberbullying. I want to say the rising issue of AI, and I think it is rising for us, but I think it's important to note that AI isn't something coming in the future. It's here right now. Like we all use it, whether
Yeah.
we know it or not. And so that's obviously, I think, though, getting some traction now amongst a lot of communities and parents particularly, and just the addictive nature of these devices, And I think parents need to, the prophet Michael Jackson, he said, start with the man in the mirror. Like we know this, don't we? Like adults, we
Yeah.
know. And so, like you give that to a forming child mind, and it's pretty full on.
I think too, anybody who's got older parents, or maybe just those who aren't so super tech savvy as well, we start maybe thinking about how do we keep the kids safe. But it's very
Yes.
easy as well for older members of our family. I think their trust can be taken advantage of, and we hear the stories come through of people getting scammed very easily online these days
Absolutely.
as well, right?
It's so true. Yeah, my wife actually used to work at a call center for a bank, and so she would definitely vouch for that. That there's like banks are very concerned about this because that's the thing. We think banks are bad people, but they don't want their customers getting scammed either. Nobody does. Nobody wants that. And so yeah, it's definitely a very, very true risk at the moment.
Okay, so Zach, what are your top tips when it comes to net safety that we can probably have a look at this week as individuals, as parents, as people who are using devices?
Yeah, well, right off the bat, Kat, I think the best conversation to have, particularly if you are parents with little ones, the first conversation actually shouldn't be necessarily with your kids. It should be with yourselves, because I think that's really important. Being on the same page with your spouse and saying, cool, what do we think about this? Because just like anything with parenting, right? If mum's saying this and then dad's like, oh, no, that's stupid, or dad's like, oh, because kids are so smart, right? They'll figure this out. They'll go, if we want this, we'll talk to dad or we'll talk to mum. So really creating that sync and that united, like, no, this is as parents, as a family, as a whānau,
Yeah,
this
they
is
will
what we think
exploit
about
whatever
smartphones.
weakness they can perceive.
Oh,
I'm aware
For sure.
of it.
And so that's the thing, getting on the same page. So
Yeah.
like saying, hey, honey, like, what do you think about smartphones? Yeah, like when should we use them? How should we
Nice.
introduce them to our kids? I think that's the first step, definitely.
Okay, what's the second step?
I think after that, it's thinking about how are we going to introduce these things. So like I said, like one of the analogies I use is, so say like with Kat. So Kat, if I give you a coffee machine, I say, look, it's a gift. You just enjoy that. And then you start using it and enjoying it. And then I burst through the door of your house one day randomly and just say, Kat, what the heck are you doing? Like, why are you making flat whites? You should only be using that for black, long blacks. Like, I
Right.
can't believe this. I'm taking that off you now.
Mm.
Like, that would be ridiculous, right? But actually, that is what we do for our kids at
Wow.
times.
Or
We just give
even,
them these.
here, enjoy this
Yeah.
coffee machine, and then you're having too much caffeine. And I'm
Hello.
like, yes,
Yeah,
I am.
exactly. Yes, but then, poor Cat in that situation, but Zach, you just gave it to me. Like it was,
Yeah.
I thought it was a present. Like you didn't You didn't tell me any of this. You just said, here you go. You didn't give me any restrictions or tell me how to use it or anything. You just said, have at it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important to think about for parents. And then lastly, what I'd say is if your child already has a phone and you realize, oh my goodness, like we didn't have these chats, I think, again, the key is to dial it back from there. You know what I mean? It's like working out, right? You don't go, that's it, I'm going to go to the gym and you start lifting 150 kilos. You work at it, right? So it's the same. It's like, cool, I'm not happy right now with my child's phone use, but let's try and dial it and scale it back.
Can I say too, one thing that I found can be helpful when you're bringing up something that could be potentially dangerous is to talk about it from your own experience, and particularly being able to share your own weaknesses about it. Like even if you're saying to, it could be a younger person or an older person, say, look, I know when I started using this, I found out surprising how much I got sucked into it. I was wasting all my time with this. Because then it's not so much about, you putting it on somebody else to say, your behavior is unacceptable. It's more saying, this is where I struggled. Can you relate to this? And it's a way of opening the door that's a little more accessible.
Totally. No, I love that because I think it is such a powerful thing for us adults to even be able to admit that to kids and young people. I think we get far more buy-in and response from them because they go, oh, okay. Yeah, no, I'm going to listen to you because, you're being honest with me and transparent and authentic.
And you actually touched on a really interesting point earlier on in the chat. The whole notion of monkey see, monkey do. Like kids are ultimately going to do what you do, not necessarily do what you say. So if you're an adult who's constantly on your phone with your head down, how can we expect our kids to be any different? And I think that's something that, as parents, you have to look at your behaviours quite critically and then, be honest with your kids about that and know that kids too don't have that level of self-control and prefrontal cortex development that parents have, right? They don't see the consequences. So it's like being honest with them, being kind to them, being understanding, but also making sure that we do actually put those boundaries in where kids can't actually, navigate that themselves, right?
Totally, Kat. And it goes back to what I was saying, like that first conversation with you, as a couple, potentially that might bring up some things. It's like, okay, well, honey, let's actually talk about your smartphone use. My wife does this to me.
Yeah.
And it's actually so good. I always welcome the challenge.
Yeah.
Because certainly out of the two of us, I'm more likely to be on my phones. And I can't get away with the excuse, oh, but I'm running the smartphone thing. No, it doesn't fly with her, which is great. I'm very appreciative of Rachel.
Sounds like you got a good woman in your life. That's great.
That's right. Starting there, I think, is a great thing for sure, guys.
Well, thank you so much, Zach. It's been really informative. And I understand if people would like more information or they'd like to use the smartphone license program, they can go to your website, smartphonelp.com. Is that correct?
That's right, Kat. Yeah, just go on there. All the info's there.
All right, smartphonelp.com. Thanks again, Zach, for joining us for this NetSafe Week.